So when Sherman's men turned in, one of his wings went right down this road, and that would have kind of theoretically been 15,000 men, because he brought 62,000 and he had 4 wings. Mm-hmm. So they turned in here. I actually, somebody found that this place was on a Union map. There's a little dot that says Worthen on a Union map, and that means turn in here, you can get your provisions, you know. So they came in, they went all through the house, ransacked closets and chests, and my great-grandmother wrote she was 15 and she witnessed all this. And they burned all the outbuildings, except for some reason they left that smokehouse. So that's the original smokehouse. And my grandfather told me that, and so when I applied for the National Register, I've had to have a lot of things restored over the years, and I had that smokehouse. It was about to fall in, and I had it restored, and I got the carpenter to give me some cross sections of some posts. The pine wasn't good enough, but the oak post was tree ring dated by the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. They've got a lab up there to do that, and they had a database for Middle Georgia, and they were 97% sure that the wood for that smokehouse was cut in 1844. Oh. So I asked the National Register people if I could interpolate that and transfer it to the house, and they thought that was okay. And so that's why I say the house dates to about 1844, the front part of the house. So then after the war, my great-great-grandmother continued on here for another, she lived to be 89, I think. So she had a barn built back there, and tenant houses and other sheds and things. And then my great-grandfather came along and married the youngest daughter, and the two of them had this buggy house built. This would have been 1895 to 1900, right in there. And he also built that barn back there. That's the 1895 barn. The old that's the new barn. The old barn that great-great-grandmother built fell down, unfortunately. It was right back in the woods back there. So that's the original smokehouse. The family had a plantation over on the Oconee. They called it the River Place, or it was Oconee and Buffalo Creek over there. It's probably a Kalen mine now. And anyway, their house burned, and they had bought this and had this house built, and it was an overseer's house. This is all family story, but all of our family stories, many of our family stories are corroborated eventually. There's evidence that I really trust them. So anyway, they had this place on the Oconee. They called it the River Place. This was their second plantation. Come on in. I have a lot of projects going on here, but I try to keep the parlor.
And you want your door closed, ma'am?
Yes, you can close it. I've had a descendant of people in the cemetery. A descendant came and visited the other day, so I pulled out a bunch of pictures to show him of the members that I know that he'd be related to.
So who's...
Look at the faux marble.
The faux marbling, yeah.
That's so similar to what's in Don's house in Linton.
So is this the general that was killed at Malvern Hill?
He was a colonel.
A colonel? Okay.
Yeah. And there's a story behind everything, but this is the only likeness we have of him over here that the family had of him, which was made on the war front in 1861, and there's an artist's or a photographer's name on it, which I forget at the moment, but so he was 58 when he was killed, and his wife lived a lot longer, and this is a picture of her when she was older.
And is that the woman you said that wrote the account of Sherman coming through the property?
No, it was her youngest daughter, my great-grandmother Tommy, who's named after her Let me see. Grandma Wicker was worried that the soldiers might smash the piano. They did a lot of things out of meanness and mischievousness. They weren't, they didn't kill people, they didn't rape people the way people do in war now. So it could have been a lot worse. So, but she had this piano put on a wagon. She had the servants, as they called them, put the piano on a wagon and drive it around the back roads of the farm, continually moving away from the troops so that they wouldn't see it. And here's an example of how family stories like that become corroborated, I think. So this is Tommy. This is the youngest daughter, and that's Tommy in there. She was an artist. She actually painted his uniform on him. That was the story behind that. She took a likeness of that and painted his uniform on it because they didn't have a picture of him in his uniform. So that's a combination of a photograph and a watercolor by Tommy. But anyway, Tommy wrote these little reminiscences for the newspaper in 1901. And so she writes this one piece where it says, she says okay, well these are a couple really good sentences. I'll just read those. Closets, wardrobes, bureau drawers, trunks, and everything was public property, the contents scattered in every direction, what was not appropriated being trodden underfoot. In the midst of all this, a great sigh from our pastor's wife, who caused us to follow her gaze, and lo, there stood a federal soldier wearing her precious cape and muff, a bridal present to her when she had left her girlhood's faraway home. Anyway, so she tells the story of this, the minister's wife starts to cry, and the soldier throws them back at her and says, "Oh, take them, I have no use for them." He was just taunting her. But, so then it goes on, and it says, shortly after this, as mother, sister, and Mrs. Marshall and myself stood closely together, watching and wondering what would be done next, an exclamation is heard on the front piazza. Here she calls it piazza, but my mother did say she called it the veranda. And this is in quotes. "Just look there at Miss Gussie's fine piano cover." We looked and beheld a horseman at the steps with his steed, enveloped in that black broadcloth cover, embroidered all around with a grapevine, leaves and grapes in natural size and color, representing millions of stitches by the hand of my sister. It is useless to attempt a description of my feelings. I looked upon this piece of art needlework as a wonderful creation. It had captured the silver cup at the fair in Augusta, Georgia, some years previous, and we had expected to keep it always. But anyway, before we could utter a word of protest, with a rude laugh, the soldier said, "No piano cover, it's the old colonel's cloak," and with a whisk of his riding whip was gone. This is called the parson's room. This little bedroom did not have any interior doors until this was cut for Reverend Herring. The Parsons really did live here.
Look at Dennis. We saw this in the Boyer house in Linton. They use the doorknob,
Yes.
same doorknob.
The spools.
Yeah. They use spools in closets to hang things on, and there's a closet that has those. So this family helped found the Christian church uptown, and they housed the ministers. I think this door is just the best preserved of all the doors we've got. The others, it's worn away. My mother even, when she first got here in the 80s, she started stripping some of the woodwork, and she stripped a door. And I'm glad that my mother didn't finish her projects.
Owners of properties of this distinction that still have the faux graining in place.
These floors have never been finished. They've never had any kind of course, they're sort of a mess, but...
Well, they used beeswax usually in that era.
And we don't know why. I'm waiting for somebody to give me a really great idea why in the world we have the step down. We really, if you go up in the, I've had a really good woodworker go up in the attic with me, and he's got knowledge of old houses. We've been in the attic, we've been underneath, we've crawled around underneath the house. And he says it's one structure. Somebody, because some people suggest, oh, was this a porch? But no, we don't think so. Jonathan and I don't think so. We think this is just the original rectangle. 4 rooms, four rooms across the front, and the hall and the 2 rooms on the back. And so why they had to step down like that, I don't know.